Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Titled Tuesday. I think most of you already know what it is, but this is an 11-round tournament with just all kinds of amazing beasts of blitz chess in here. Tons of players over 2,900, over 3,000, crazy ratings. And they duke it out for 11 rounds, try to score, 9.5, 10 points out of 11 to win the tournament and get huge prize money. In the tournament, below me, you can see the standings. We've got Hikaru Nakamura as the top seed today in the last 3 or 4 minutes. What? How could somebody be above Hikaru in the standings now? Who is Enrique Buti? Who is Enrique Buti? Oh my goodness. I was going to tell you all that crazily in the last 5 minutes, 2 players had just joined Sibyl Elephant and Leon Beast, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Vladislav Artemiev, who could challenge Hikaru. But apparently, we've got 2 players who are placed above Hikaru here in the standings. This is crazy. Let's go check out some of the top games in round 1. With 5 seconds off the clock, Hikaru has already built a position here. And so far, Nicholas Brunner is doing all right in the first round here against Hikaru with the bishop pair. For a slight structural disadvantage, there goes the bishop pair. And Hikaru's pawn structure is well placed to keep the g7 bishop at bay. He is maneuvering quickly, and he has 2 minutes and 50 seconds left to use at some point in this game when there's something to think about. Apparently, so far, nothing yet. He creates some tension on the A file. He's going to try and seize control of that. This is an important moment for Black to consider whether they want to play A5 and blow up the whole area. They do not. Hikaru gets the file the way that he wants it. And now Black's going to try and get a knight to A4. But if rook A5, knight B6, the rook could probably take the pawn. And here we see a moment for Hikaru to stop and think for a moment. Okay, and he goes for a different move. Rook A6. We get the trade, and the knight heads to E4. But, Hikaru can cover that square with F3 when he needs to. By the way, things happening so fast, I didn't have a chance to introduce myself. Greetings, everybody. I'm International Master David Pruess. This is my first time hosting Titled Tuesday. I am not much of a blitz player myself. The action here is much faster than my brain, but there is the F3 move, kicking the knight out. And if Black trades on E5, suddenly Hikaru will have like a much nicer pawn structure here. And both B5 and D5 will be weaknesses. Black really doesn't want to lose the F6 square for the knight because it could cover D5. Anyway, qualified or not to comment on blitz, I am here today, and we are going to have a lot of fun either way because there are amazing players here to watch, and they're going to make sure that this is good. So Nicholas covers the knight on F6. And yeah, if Hikaru trades on E7 and goes after the B5 pawn with rook to B6, then Black will have counterplay with the rook on E7 coming into E2. So Hikaru's not going to want to let Nicholas get through on the E file at all. He's going to try and hold this file closed. Tripling up on the knight on F6. Oof! That's a pound and a half of pressure. And surprisingly, to some, he doesn't repair his pawn structure here with F takes E5. He prefers getting this amazing square on D4 for the knight. And he's laying siege to the B5 pawn. It looks in great danger. Centralizing up the king. There were some possible tactical ideas that he stopped and considered for 5 seconds. That means he probably looked at about 30 variations there. But he decided to just bring up the king and go after B5. There were ideas with like E6, and then if F takes E6, rook C7, knight E6 check, and knight takes C7 and stuff like that. Anyway, I didn't have nearly enough time to calculate them either. Just noticed that there was something there, and he stopped for a second and decided it wasn't what he wanted. Wow. More than a dozen players have already won their first games, most of them all GMs for the moment. And here Hikaru simply picks up the b5 pawn that was triple attacked. And it's looking pretty easy. He's considering rook d5 check before taking the knight. Rook d5 check, king c6, rook c5 check. He could have gotten it back. Interesting. I guess he thinks the d5 pawn is so weak he doesn't need to risk the black rook getting counterplay on the d file at the end. He'd rather black have the d pawn for one more moment because it's so weak with his king on d4. He knows he can win here anyway. All right, black goes after h2, but they need a passed pawn to have any counterplay, and they did not have time to take the g pawn. So black is down. Time to resign. Let's check out another game over here. Here we've got Vladislav Artemyev, an incredibly strong blitz player as well. He's got the black pieces here, equal pawns, but the knight is not looking as good as the bishops right now, and that A pawn is looking fairly dangerous. Akash is trying to trade off the bishop pair by putting the bishop on d5 so that black will only have one bishop, which is often a good idea, but in this case, it seems like it won't save him because the remaining knight will still be so much worse than the bishop. Surprise trade from Artemyev, just collecting the c6 pawn. I thought he was just going to start pushing the a pawn like mad, but here we go. White's trying to play knight to d5. It would hit the bishop and threaten knight e7. That's a tricky little blitz trick, and a king move avoids a lot of the worst tactics. That makes sense. White's also going to look for rook a7. Gets it. This is not easy, this endgame at all at this point. Very, very tricky to advance that a pawn, and if you make a single mistake, rook c1 check threatened. If you make a single mistake as black, you drop that pawn and the advantage is gone. So Artemyev looked for rook c1, didn't get it. Akash with 0.3 seconds. Artemyev might get the flag at some point here. Fast move from Akash. There's a 1 second increment. Somehow he added more than 1 second on a move. That was truly impressive. Artemyev's going to go after f2. Finds his way in there. Oh yeah, he found the way. He found the way to win the game. Bravo. Found the second weakness on the king side on f2. And this should be pretty easy to mop up because he can just take all the kingside pawns now if he wants to. And he does. And that will be Artemyev joining the leaders on 1 and 0. Here goes an h pawn. Goodbye. Let's see if Maxime is still playing. No, Maxime has already won his game as well. We've got Jeffrey Xiong with a bishop against a queen. He is in deep trouble here against the Slovak fighter. Will 5 seconds be enough to convert this weird position? I would think so. f7 is the weakness, right? Just like Artemyev attacked f2 with the rook and the bishop last game, here white needs to attack f7 with the knight and the queen. And there we go, a huge upset right away. Jeffrey Xiong, he's probably won Title Tuesday before. He did win the Grand Prix of a couple weekend blitz tournaments. And down he goes. Wow. How about this? Arian Tari winning. And we're probably getting near the end of this round. We'll refresh it and find a game. Rook and pawn ending. It can be a little bit tricky to win this one when the black king is right there on g6. Let's see. Right now, white's plan is to push h7. Watch out, black. Yeah, checks to get the king away. White wanted to bring the king near enough to the g-pawn where white could play h7, trade rooks on h7, play king f6, and win the endgame with the king. So now black blockades the pawn, threatening king takes g5. Playing good defense. I think this might be theoretically drawn right? With the black king in such good position. Chasing the king away, keeping good position there. Rook back here, and now checks. I feel like the side checks are best here. All right, drawn by 50, move rule. Great defense by Oglob71. Bravo. Bravo. I have played Title Tuesday myself a couple times, and there's a big orange button that you guys can't see on stream right now, but it's beckoning to me, and I'm trying very hard to stay off of it. Here's our last game, and it could be a long one with the 1 second increment. If white wins those 2 pawns, we could get the famous bishop and rook versus rook endgame. Yep, we got it. And now white's got 50 moves to try and push the black king to the side of the board and set up a win. And yeah. King's already on the edge. That's a good start for white. Yep. Pin him there. I think people playing these kind of tournaments have a lot of experience with this endgame in general. Rook b6 check looks good here. And then drop back to b7. Rook h6 is the only way to block over there. Preparing something to swing the rook to b1, right? Good defense from black so far. Another 40 moves to go, though. This is not easy at any point. Uh-oh. Now he can check and go back, and he's done. Oh, and another one bites the dust. I think with just a 1 second increment, this endgame is probably harder to defend than to win. I mean, I would guess that on a 1 second increment, white wins more often than it's a draw. But I don't know for sure. So that's it for round 1. Let's get into round 2, and we'll watch a game of my chess hero. This is Daniil Dubov playing here as Dules, with white playing a bishop b5 Sicilian. That means I've got to play that next. A chess hero is somebody whose style of play and openings you try to emulate. Knight f to d2 because of bishop g4, which otherwise would have been awkward for white if white challenged the knight with the knight on b1. With knight c3 or knight d2, the move bishop g4 could have been a bit awkward. So, okay, so here we go. Trades, trades, trades. Black's got the bishop pair. The light squared bishop seems to have pretty good prospects. White's got weak light squares. And black's advance of the a pawn looks really smart, preventing white from playing knight a4 to c5, which would be a powerful maneuver. So Dubov looks to the king side. Looks to the king side, poking at the black king. Black's trying to bust out the bishop on g7, which needs to be active as well. And, ooh, I don't know. All right. I was looking at h6 and bishop g5. I don't know what the point is, but it looked dynamic. Dubov will show us, perhaps, what the idea was. I don't see it yet. Okay, it's just a pawn. I mean, the move occurred to me, but I didn't know what it did, and I still don't know what it does. H pawn down. I see we got a lot of dojoers in chat. Hey, Chess Gains. Hey, Rangao. Hey, Kings. Hey, Zero Sun. Wait, which channel am I in? No, this is the chess channel. I'm watching the right channels, chat. Hey, guys. Welcome to the show. Can you believe it? We're chilling here watching Dubov from home. Lucky us. All right. Black going for some counterplay against b2. White's plan is probably going to be f4 to open up the king side. I mean, it doesn't justify the h6 pawn sack at any point, but that's what black should expect and see coming here. It's going to be the next move right now. No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. No. I need to study his games even more often. I already study all his games, but it means I need to study them even more. Wow, we got Smurberg, Neve, Hoki, Xavier. Yeah, there's no queen trades for you, TST. No queen trades for you. This game is going down in blood, win or lose. White is gunning for the king, king, king. Queen C1 could maybe come at some point. There's bishop D3. The knight's attacked. Okay, he was ready for that. It's tricky. It's tricky. This bishop is really like owning us now. Oh man, that bishop. It's really strong. It's beyond problematic. The knight on G3 can't move. The bishop on F2 has to hold it. We're losing here, by the way. I'm just putting you guys all on Team Dubov. Sorry for forcing you. But this looks bad. He's going for knight F1. That's why he had to move the rook on F1 to be able to move any of his pieces again ever. He also wanted to play E6, but TST saw it coming and played E6 themselves to stop white from having this bishop G3 idea with E6. Okay, the queen is strong here, continuing to protect this pawn and the undefended bishop. Gives white a lot less tactics here. This bishop's going to come here probably to trade to keep the knight from going to G4. You can't let Dubov's knight to G4. What are you thinking about, TST? Trying to hang yourself on your own flag for no reason here? What's he thinking about, folks? Can you allow knight G4? No, you can't. There's bishop F5. 20 seconds later is like a 30-minute think entitled Tuesday. Now, the knight could move again. Dubov's going to set up a trap on that queen on H4. Yeah, I was thinking knight F1, rook H2. I don't know if TST saw this coming, but queen down. Queen down. What a tricky idea to threaten knight G4 and then when bishop F5, play G4. Oh, man. How did Dubov win this game? Black's still fighting, but not really. Black just doesn't know that they're not fighting anymore. Bishop F4, setting up a sick mating net, but we've got it covered. Queen F4, there it is. Down. That's where you resign. This is where you resign. There you go. He's seen the Queen's Gambit too. Good job, TST. See how Hikaru is doing. Sorry for stepping away from the top seed for a moment, folks. Just needed some Dubov. What's going to happen to that bishop on A5? That daring bishop of Jeet Janes. Was this a planned exchange sack or did he blunder rook A8? We'll never know. Rook takes B4 is going to clean this endgame up. Easy peasy. The bishop's still dead. If you don't take on B4, Hikaru's going to play rook B5. Yeah. Good moment for giving up. All right. Who else is still going? Let's see if we can get a look at the Lion Beast. No, Maxime's already taking care of business. Dretch is playing, but he's also already taking care of business. So, hey. We got Artemiev again. Sibelephant Artemiev. Breaking through on G6. Too bad there's no black king here. But still looks like Artemiev is in control. He's up one pawn at the moment. The knights are a little bit funky. And black's H-pawn could be really dangerous if black had a good move with the bishop and got this knight to retreat and got the pawn rolling. So Artemiev tries to take care of it right away. 20 seconds each here with that 1 second increment. And David Kalashian cannot figure out how to disentangle the bishop, rook, knight, and is just sitting here running out of time. Finds a way to hit the knight, but there's knight F4 here, which is going to pick up his pawn on H5. Yeah, that wasn't it. I don't know what was it, but that was not it. Now the game is lost for black on the clock, on the board. The knight's hanging. He's just going to let time run out. Like Wesley So in the Speed Chess Championships yesterday. Did you guys see that match? I imagine a lot of you did. That was crazy. Let's see. The Black King, it's like walking all around. Okay, got into the home. Can you leave the knight hanging? You don't really want to leave your knight hanging. Maybe... Yeah, leave the knight hanging. Good call. He got it. Man, Fandorine. Maxim Chigayev. Stopped and calculated just at the right time. Ooh, getting the queen to the light square. So pretty. Woo. Woo. Wesley won by 1 point by dragging out the last bullet game when he was up by 2 points and was losing the last bullet game. He dragged it out just barely, stalled out the last like 5 seconds, and got the match win. I would say that that Nihal was a bit scary, but I think honestly that Wesley was not scared. I mean, I haven't seen the interview part of the match, but I imagine that Wesley is just such a solid guy. He was like, yeah, the guy's good, but you know, just maximizing every game I play and winning whatever competitions I can. Don't worry about how good the opponent is and how tough it's going to be for you in the future to play against them. Just play the game in front of you. And here we've got Rasmus Sven of Germany winning a king and pawn endgame. Elementary. Okay, here's a real endgame for us. Rook endgame. Small advantage for Sergei Zhigalko. White should use the king to cover the c-pawn. Yeah, don't go to f3. That's fake active, right? When you can't get up any further. Go defend your weakness with the king, then bring your rook into the game. And suddenly you're winning. Oh my god. Tjoma, you might beat a GM. Oh man. Check. Back up. d4, king, d3. Get space for the white king. Let's go back. Let's go around and do that again. Rook b8 to d8. Oh no, rook b6 to g6. That got easier. That got easier. Tjoma's got it. The only threat is b3. Not going to allow it. Very nice. Now you can just move the f pawn or clean up like that. Beautiful. F pawn, you are my friend. Very weird maneuver. But all maneuvers win for white, weird as that may be. What's up, Chess TV? Anybody out there on Chess TV right now? I heard that the purple screen has gotten better. So I'm here to say hi to you all if you're there. When is the Hikaru versus Ding semifinal? You know what? Oh, a dirty little trick from Zhigalko to see if white was pre-moving with rook a1. I've heard of this kind of trick. I'm not much of a blitz person, but I've heard that this is sort of a trick just to see if your opponent is pre-moving at the end of a game. Although even if white were pre-moving like f8 equals queen, it wouldn't... Would this beat white? Not quite. White was winning by so much. But anyway, incredible upset for Tjoma, 888888888. So bravo to him. I imagine that the next semifinal from the Speed Chess Championships is on one of the slides in my slideshow. So we can all find the date together when we have to go on break. But for now, we've got round 3 to watch live. Hikaru's playing a double fianchetto opening. Yeah. And it's going to be kind of like a hippo with a bishop pair, huh? Never let a hippo get a bishop pair. You don't know what they're going to do with that. I'm kidding. It's fine for black to play like this. I mean, you can give up the bishop on g6 as long as it's not a bad bishop on c8. It's something for white to play for, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so when you've got a situation like this, one of the key pieces to look at is the unopposed bishop. And you see Hikaru refuses to have his bishop pair broken up and puts yet another pawn on 3rd rank. Wow, bravo. It's like a hedgehog and a hippo at once. some kind of a chimera, a mix of the two. So a very, very big question throughout the game is, are there going to be any diagonals opening for this piece here? At the moment, black's very solid on d5, and if white played c4 to try and open up this bishop at some point, black would take this bishop off the board. Korchmar is going to fight for some dark squares on the king side now. That looks good. F6, king h1. Yeah, if it were a hedgehog the size of a hippo, that would be quite the beast, Jay. So, knight's trade, bishop pair is still there. Black, I like that trade that they made with g5. Because it just created a little space for black so they don't get sort of slow rolled by the pawns on the king side. Okay, Hikaru makes a move to get this bishop involved in the game. And Korchmar's looking at what are his options to try and trade these two pieces here. Because the rook's presence now would have to be with knight d7, which would maybe leave this pawn hanging, right? So if Korchmar played knight to d7, Hikaru could try to just win a pawn on d5. And on bishop b2, queen b2, the bishop's defended now. So Korchmar goes into the tank with less than half the time of Hikaru at this point. It's a tough moment. Yeah, I don't have an exact advice for black other than maybe b6 to get one more pawn off the bishop's diagonal. Oh, Korchmar is testing their calculation abilities. Playing knight d7, seemingly losing that pawn on d5. Is the plan to trade on b2 and then play knight e5 at the end? I suppose so, and Hikaru doesn't go for the pawn. He goes another way, kicks the knight to h7. Knight's temporarily suffering, and it's asking a really, really tough question of Korchmar again, as Korchmar is like, I spent all my time figuring out that knight d7 move, and then Hikaru didn't go into the variation he calculated with the pawn sack on d5, and instead keeps the pressure on. This is painful. The white rooks are getting better than the black rooks. Korchmar looking at some scenario where they could play d takes c4 and open up the d file. Not happening just yet. Who's Artemiev playing right now during this round 3? Are these matchups getting tougher? He's playing Grandmaster Biniolis. I'm not sure who that is. Maybe Bukowski. Knight f8. h5, stopping knight g6. The knight can go back to h7, and by then Hikaru's ready to play g6. So Korchmar just sits there. What a tough situation to be in against Hikaru with 7 seconds on the clock. I would think that the white bishop would go to e4 at some point. Oh, did Hikaru have bishop c6 here and just not go for it? Yeah. Interesting. Queen on e5 is good. Now the bishop on g2 is stuck. So Hikaru's playing for h6 purely to break through on f6, I think. I don't see any other way to explain Hikaru's play up to here. Korchmar's side coming at least. That's really good. The first step in blitz is you got to start predicting some of your opponent's moves. It's hard to do. I think rook f7 could be played because on rook g6 you'd have rook f8 check, removing it. But Hikaru improves the bishop from g2 first. Threatens queen takes h6. Black's got 1 second. They're just moving back and forth. Nothing they can do. And white wins by timeout with a sick combination at the end, folks. Let's just see the point of this combination. That's very nice. The queen wasn't on h4 just to take this pawn, but to set up this. Oof. Brutal, scintillating tactics. Hard to see your opponent's tactics coming when you've got 1 second on the clock. All right, so here we've got Biniolis, Grandmaster from Poland. Check him out. Hanging in there right now against Artemiev. Zbigniew Pakleza. Yeah, trading the weakness on b2 seems good because that was a weakness. Now, if black plays f4 at some point here, white can't trade. Like cb3, knight b3. For a moment, c3 is in danger. Black can play f4, make the bishop retreat, and then e4. Maybe goes for e4 first. Okay, now... Oh, and now just trades it. Wow. Sick technique. Transferring white into an endgame they're going to hate. I've got an endgame for you, and I'm certain that you're going to hate it. Sends the king to e2 to defend e3. The b-pawn's running. White's got no time to take on h6. White's got nothing. What a transition from Artemiev. King f5 now? Or king f6? Oh, white's not done yet. White's not done yet. Here comes the e-pawn as well. e2. Yeah, now the king can go over and embrace the d-pawn. Wow, this is a fascinating endgame. And nice defense by Vignoles. The king is still in the square of that g-pawn. And, yeah, knight comes to f3. Has to come back to d4. Black's trying to play king f6. White has to go back to h4 to stop that. Yeah. Tricky. Is there no way to win this? Fantastic defense by white. This is unbelievable. Oh, and now just bring the king back to the pawn. Wow, I can't believe Vignoles held that endgame. I want to study that thing. 3-minute chess, I need an hour, at least 30 minutes to study that endgame. And then practice it against my friend. Leon Beast triumphed in round 3, by the way. As you can see, massive pawns, especially the A pawn. See who else is still playing. Wow. E-Ball gets his own big thumbs down right there. As he goes down. And let's see Artyom Timofeyev. Here with the extra... Don't queen it. There you go. Bishop g6. Check, avoiding the stalemate. Queens on f8. And that is game right there. Let's see if we can find another amazing endgame. Ooh, Grandmaster Platty. One extra pawn in this rook endgame. That's what I like. That's what I like. A nice technical rook endgame. Checks the king away first before grabbing the pawn, making space for the king to come up to f6. Oh, decides to send the king to g5. Black prepares rook f8 check as a defense. He's going to give the rook check? No, doesn't. Now white's got rook f6. King here and pawn. I think this is winning for white right now because they can cut the black king off by the ranks. You may have heard that you can cut off a king on a file to win with an extra pass pawn, but if you cut them off on a rank, oh no, don't give that check. If you cut them off on a rank, it's also winning. All right. White's got to kind of loosen it up. Rook h2 and king here. All right. Smash! There we go. Beautiful endgame play from Platty. Isn't that? Alain Pichot. Yeah, a very, very good speed chess player. And that was the last game of round 3. We are into round 4. Hikaru versus Moro, but I don't think this is Morozevich. I think this might be Moroni, based on the Italian flag. It's a guess. If I had more Title Tuesday experience, I might know who all the Title Tuesday regulars are, but the only Italian Grandmaster I know whose name starts with Moro is Grandmaster Luca Moroni. Chess Games confirms. Chess TV chat kind of dead. Everybody's over on Twitch, huh? I see you, Campanelle, and that's about it. All right, so white gives up the bishop pair on g5. Has a very nice center, of course. Queen b3. I would keep my bishop pair if I were black, but how? Ooh, I don't know where I want to bring this piece. If I go here, knight e4 collects it. If I go to e7, my queen can't retreat, and she's stuck out in weird land. Maybe... Oh, knight c6 to just keep the bishop for the moment. But white's angling for d5. Black's going to answer d5 with bishop takes knight. There's a delicate construction. That's why you see Moroni thinking for a while there. Hikaru's preparing bishop e4 right now. Maybe other things too. I mean, surely other things too. But level 1, he's preparing bishop e4. If black plays bishop b7, then d5 might be good because you don't have bishop takes c3, pawn takes c6 anymore. Right? So that would be like he threatens bishop e4. You try and pre-defend the knight, but once your bishop's on b7, white's got d5. So the bishop retreats, and that's going to be bishop pair. Back for Hikaru. This pawn probably won't be able to take back because of queen b6. So he's going to have to bring the queen back, recapture, and be weaker on the c-file still. Hikaru's looking for better, though. He's wondering, can I make this even worse with rook c1 first? I was looking at both rook c1s. Hikaru picks that one. Note the big think by Hikaru's standards. Spent half of his time on that rook c1 move. Going into bishop e4. Black's got knight a5, I suppose. Black's got knight a5, I suppose, here, and does play it. And Hikaru doesn't mind because this way of breaking up the bishop pair will be just as effective for him, leaving black with weak light squares, especially on c6. c7 a good target. Space advantage for white in the center. This position looks not good at all for Moroni, but he manages to break free with the c-pawn. Can he do this? He was one move away, folks, from Hikaru playing queen c6, and then he's really, you know, struggling. c5. Okay, this looks like it might be okay. I don't see any reason why there'd be a tactical refutation. The knight on b7 is awkward for a moment, but Hikaru doesn't look like he's got any tactical juice here. a5. He finds tactical juice. 20 seconds, though. He stopped in his tracks. He was like, I hadn't planned on this. And he finds a way to complicate the game. I don't even know if it's really to his favor. I suppose the knight on b7 is awkward enough that it's hard for Moroni to fight that b6 pawn. What an incredible transition from Hikaru there. a5. What? So if knight a5, then white can take on c5. Pawn takes a5, also white can take on c5. Wow, that was fascinating. f5 is maybe a nice move for Moroni. I mean, I'm just happy to see that knight come off of b7. That seems promising. Hikaru avoids rook c8, gets into the 7th rank. Black's going to want to play rook b8, and Hikaru's got an idea of playing like rook d1 and doubling on the 7th rank. Like if this rook comes over here, maybe he abandons the pawn to switch to another area. But black's got knight e8 to calculate, which might make that whole thing work out. Then Hikaru has rook a7, like rook d1, knight e8, rook a7, and black is frozen. But okay, he just goes to the 6th rank, hits the knight, hits the e6 pawn. That's a nice try, but there's rook c8. Yeah, you can't do that. Oh, and he's down. Hikaru makes it to the first break with a perfect 4-0. We're going to go check on Leon Beast. Finally going to see like a full Leon Beast endgame here. And Maxime is up a pawn against Super Notar's bishop pair. We've got an IM here with 3-0. Very impressive. And that d5 pawn is pretty strong. It's not even clear who's trying to win this endgame, despite Maxime being up a pawn. I mean, you know, it's a blitz tournament. They're both trying to win. They're probably both trying to win the game, right? But I think, like, you know, in terms of who actually has the advantage, who should be trying to win, white's going for d6, bishop g8 here. It's quite dangerous for black, I think we can say. Thinking, is it the moment or is it not? It's kind of the moment. It's kind of your moment, Super Notar. Like, what else are you going to do if you don't go for d6, bishop g8 right now? Because Maxime's going to play... Oh, Maxime can't play a4 as long as you keep the pawn on d5. But like if you go bishop b3, black can play a4, right? So what is white supposed to do? You could play bishop b5, sacking the a pawn, d6, king c8, king e5. It seems very, very risky. I think you got to go for bishop g8. Did you miss king e6 there? That's rough. I guess he's going for bishop d8 now, or this was not part of his plan. Oh, no. Oh, no. Bishop takes g6. Never mind. This guy is still in the game. Although, I mean, we've seen him use up his entire time advantage. Things are pretty tricky here. I think the knight goes back to d7 now. It's true that Maxime can't make progress with bishop takes a2 as long as bishop takes g6 is in the air. Knight's going to transfer to e5, cover this, still be ready to sack for the pawn as needed, and bishop takes here. Oh, yeah. Feels like black's got this. But wait, is there bishop g6, knight g6, d7? Bishop takes g6, knight g6, d7 queening. Oh my god, I think he may have had just a fascinating move there, folks. Wait, he's going anyway. He found some other way to win. Oh my goodness. Bishop on a2 is like out of the game. And Maxime is out of the group with the perfect score, but Super Notar is not, this Ukrainian IM whose name we'll have to look up. Alexei Mali. I played this guy when we were both 20. Wow. Alexei Mali. Well, that's a name I haven't seen in 2 decades. Wow, fantastic. Not a little whippersnapper kid. No, no, no. A dude like me. Okay, can Den Laz hold this endgame against Alexander Donchenko? How many players total in the title Tuesday? There are 2 players short of 500 GPA, as far as I can tell. Yeah. Uh-oh. Black's getting access to b3. Oh, but this is a draw. You can actually go passive to the first rank, and it's a draw because there isn't room for the rook to check you from the other side and break the back rank. So you don't even need to like do the Philidor, right? And you see why he's happy to just go back and forth on this rank here and get that draw. Bravo. Bravo. Okay. Let's see what other games we got going here. Just a couple. I gotta fix one thing about the slideshow for 1 second, folks. Please excuse me for one moment. Okay, I think I got it right. How's this endgame going? Who's winning this one, folks? You're going to have to commentate it for me for a second here. Who do you think is winning and why? Ooh, the trade on e7. Who did that favor? I guess neither player, really. All right. And that is it for round 4. Everybody, there is a small scheduled break in Title Tuesday So hang around and enjoy the slideshow or the ads or each other's company. So I will be back with you in just a couple minutes with round 5 of Titled Tuesday. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are live here with round 5 of Titled Tuesday. 4 rounds down, 7 to go. 1 break in the books, 1 more break to go. And I wanted to show you all a FIDE master who's at 4 out of 4 so far in Titled Tuesday. I wanted to give Shubin Kirill, 2003. The numbers at the end of somebody's name, it's just always their birth year, right? So it's like walking around telling us your age. So Shubin Kirill, 18 years old, from Russia, FIDE master, and currently at 4 out of 4 in Titled Tuesday, tied with 20 GMs and a couple IMs. As far as I saw, the only FIDE master with a perfect 4 out of 4. So let's give him some love. Playing an odd variation of the winnower with b6 and then retreating the bishop instead of trading on c3. So it doesn't actually have like the full winnower feeling with that doubled pawn and the bishop missing for black, right? Instead, it feels more like a normal French. Now, I don't like white's adventure with bishop b5 and bishop takes c6, so I think Shubin is doing quite all right at the moment. The main problem is suffering from some space disadvantage on the king side for these pieces to get out. So, like if you play knight e7 and white plays g4, you have to have a plan for where you move next. And Shubin chooses to lock up the center and go for some queenside push. I think they've just given up on these two pieces. They're like, I don't know what to do about them. Rook on h8. You babysit. I'm just going to like push a bunch of pawns here. Now, this is very controversial. Should white try and get the knight out of the way and push f5 quickly, or should white just meet black on the queen side and say like, you've got a space advantage, but I've got twice as many pieces as you, so like hooray for your pawn structure. It looks like white's going with the first plan of jamming that f pawn straight up. I thought the knight would go to h4 if white were doing this, but who knows. Now g4 is going to be played. Whenever knight e7 is played, g4 is going to be played to stop knight f5. Oh yeah, and there's Valery Sviridov also on 4 out of 4, a national master. That's right. I almost overlooked. I did overlook that, Jay, because even I have been around once or twice and noticed that Sviridov is not a national master at Blitz Chess. But yeah, we should check out a game of Sviridov's at some point today as well. He's at 4 out of 4 at the moment also. All right, black taking that f5 square for the knight, but you got to give the f6 square to the white knight to get the f5 square for your knight. So do you really want it? Maybe bishop g7 first, preparing to defend that f6 check, because if you go like pawn takes g4, knight takes g4, knight f5, then white has knight f6 check, winning your queen. Okay, black starts the journey. This game is very, very controversial. Now white's got the space advantage on the king side, but the exposed king. Black's got the space advantage on the queen side, but their king's there. So white can consider b3 at some point, as well as, note that the a5 pawn is undefended. We got to keep our eyes on that pawn. All right, connected rooks fighting for the file. If white could trade off a lot of material, then they would have an edge in the endgame because they've got a space advantage on the king side. God, I can't help it. I see this yo-yoing thing over here saying white's not good when I say white could be good. Anyway, if a lot of pieces came off the board, then the white king would be less threatened with checkmate, and the area that's open is the king side. So white could potentially, make maneuvers on the king side that would be good for white. The problem for white is going to be like a knight on f5 is going to be hard to get through. White's going to have to figure out a way to quickly trade it for one of white's knights. Rook f7. So this pawn seems to be hanging at the moment, but white's king would, suffer quite an attack. So Pichot also improving the king before going forward. But look at this pressure on the f-file from Shubin. Very, very impressive play so far by black. Very, very unusual, positional play and creating an interesting game. Now the bishop on c6 is being kind of left out of the action. White's marshaling the forces around their king, protecting the king. Does a moment come where you can play knight g5, bishop g5, rook h7, queen h7, knight g5, queen h1? You don't necessarily want that. So the king keeps moving. Okay, everybody comes to the h file. Now knight g5, bishop g5, and black's really got the file. It's very hard to figure out who's going to come out on top here. Very hard to figure out. I don't know. Bishop e1 threatens queen a5, so it asks some question there. What does black have to do? Queen a7? No, black allows queen a5 check and goes for a tactic of their own. Man, oh man, oh man. Takes the pawn on f4 that's now defended 3 times, just based on the pressure here. Look, the rooks on the h file helped black take on f4 more than they did when they were on the f file. Sometimes the mechanisms in chess are pretty crazy, right? That's why you've each spent your entire lives studying this game, and you're still not rated 3000 yet. It's just really, really complicated. Take some guts to allow your opponent to play a move like queen takes a5 check right in your king's face, right? Woo! The material remains equal at the moment. We've got an opposite colored bishop situation, and white's bishop looks way better than black's, right? Currently planning to come into c5 and allow this. Black's got like one move to come up with something. G5, G5. I think that's right. And black finds it. Uh-oh. Rook there. Queen f7, threatening rook f3, but bishop c5. Is bishop c5 in time? Setting up the queen trade. Knight d4 check. Knight d4, rook h2. King moves queen f2 and queen f1 mate. Oh my goodness. Black had to play knight takes d4 check, I think, on that move. Anyway, it's passing us by. They've got 3 seconds each. White's now up a pawn temporarily, but there goes that one. White's dark square bishop, opposite bishop, is still better than black's. Uh-oh. Winning in exchange for black, going after c3 with the knight, but white's got knight e2 prepared. No, knight d5, even better. And back to d5. I don't know which player is trying to win. Could be either. 3 seconds each. That e-pawn seems to have just queened. And white is going to take the game. The FIDE Masters incredible run comes to an end. Folks, can we just look for 1 second at that key moment? Because it was a fantastic possible move here. I think knight d4 check, forking the king and knight on the square the knight was on. I mean, the whole time as they were heading towards this position, I kept looking at rook takes f3 tactics. But here, there just isn't time because queen c5 is coming, winning black's queen. And this is where in the game, black brought the queen like back to c7 and traded into that endgame. But I think knight d4 check would work because you're threatening queen takes knight. So, of course, the knight takes you back, but that means the bishop's still not defending these squares. Then you go rook h2. There's nobody to cover the king here, right? If king here, that's checkmate. And if king comes back here, then you can go check here and back rank mate. Isn't that like a sick moment? I hadn't fully calculated it. I couldn't at the speed that they were playing. The move knight d4 barely had time to appear in my head before they were playing on and on past that. But that was the moment for Shubin Kirill. All right. Hikaru is at 5-0. Let's see what other games are still going. There might still be one endgame for us. Oh, it might be heading towards king and rook versus king and rook. We saw that endgame recently. check, check, check. Like a metronome, we head into round 6 with a draw there. And looking at the standings, we have, as far as I can tell, 9 players with 5 out of 5. And that includes 7 Grandmasters, plus Valery Sviridov and Ibrahimli Murad. So let's get into the games. Hikaru versus Bortnik. That's incredible. And also there's Sviridov versus Timofeyev. Can we watch 2 games at once? We're going to try. I'm going to use one eye for each board. Okay, so Sviridov playing an English. He's going to go for d5. This maneuver, knight e1 to c2 to e3 to d5, is the main maneuver here for white in this opening. Black normally counters with a6, b5, so that if this knight's on d5, you got this b4 option to kick this knight. But white is going for a3, b4 themselves quickly, so we'll see who gets that tension first on the opponent's strong pawn. Black just goes into d4, and that invites b4, and Sviridov says, yep, I'll play b4. That's what I'm here for. Instantly with the trade, because there was pressure against the c4 pawn coming from the c takes b4 threat from black at some point. And Timofeyev removes the offending g2 bishop, which was all set up to be annoying. Maybe it's time to sack and exchange with bishop h1. I kid. It's going to be a4, looking for a5 before even starting to look at this pawn, huh? Oh, Timofeyev wants to do something with the bad bishop. But wouldn't a5 have stopped the bishop from coming to a5? What's the deal with bishop d8? I'm not sure. Sviridov drops the knight on d5. Hikaru versus Bortnik. I forgot to watch that at the same time. Knight d5? What has Hikaru just done? Knight to d5. He's lined these up with the queen. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. It's the famous knight d5 Sicilian tactic. Trades. Black takes with the bishop instead of the pawn. As so often happens when you get busted by this tactic, instead of taking, and then getting broken up here, you trade the bishop because you know you're going to lose it back anyway. And he comes with knight e5, and Bortnik is not broken just yet, right? He's now facing the bishop pair, but the knight's got a solid square in the center, and Hikaru strikes immediately, opening up the opposite colored bishop and giving up a pawn just positionally to put pressure. He's already given up his structure. Now he's giving up an actual pawn. And Bortnik says, yeah, you can have e5 if you want. I just need to be able to counter this file on d8. Meanwhile, Sviridov's knight on d5 has been traded off, but with a pawn structure that seems pretty good for white. Pressuring on the b file, pressuring on e5. I would say black has 2 weaknesses and white has mainly one. If black could play h5, h4, this king could be like sort of a secondary one. But at the moment, it seems like white's got a pleasant advantage over there. Hikaru and Bortnik, he's taking back his pawn on e5. Bortnik brought out the bishop and the rooks, traded a piece. And it looks like Bortnik has equalized, but he goes for a tactic. Instead of just saving the rook. And now Hikaru is looking for rook d7, so he's got to play rook d8 probably. But he's got to be careful. Rook d8 is there queen f4. No, rook d1 is check. Rook d8 looks playable. Rook d7's coming. Bortnik chose to go for b2, which was definitely like an aggressive move. I mean, that doubled pawn on b2 was so weak. And he like risked, I mean, he spent like half a minute on his clock to try and calculate this and go for it. He finally plays rook d8, gives back the pawn on b7 anyway. What was the point of all that? We don't know. Now if he goes queen d1 and bishop e5, Hikaru covers with g3 just fine. So Hikaru's going to try and force him passive with bishop on c4. He's going to go queen f6, bishop d4, I guess. Can Hikaru take on a5 and get back to e1 to defend his king? He can. Hikaru is going to go up 1 pawn here. Does black have bishop c3 to try and mess with that plan? Yes. So now the queen might have to go to like a8, f3, which would mess up white's pawn structure. No. Okay, he finds a different way through. Bishop e5, still keeping him back. Trying to just keep that queen from getting to f2. He knows the counterplay is not quite enough. If white gets the queen back to defend f2, they can just push the a pawn forward, and it's going to be probably winning for Hikaru. How are Sviridov and Timofeyev doing? White's advanced very risky g4, but maintaining a very nice position so far. Black threatens e4. Nice trap. White moves the queen off of it, so at least the queen won't be attacked. And now on e4, white's prepared queen h8. Okay. Two can play at this game, says Sviridov. Nice. Hikaru in deep thought for a blitz tournament, figuring out how his queen can get around that dark squared bishop. Queen trade. So queen on f6 was so strong that Timofeyev gives the queen trade. Now white plays f3. They need to attack this pawn with f4 at some point, but not when it can play e4, not when it can trade. This is very hard to show the full advantage for white. Pressuring b7. Timofeyev's position is creaking. Play d6. White tries it. Bishop e5. That's an extra pawn. The rook can always come defend it, and then there's rook a6 threats if you trade bishops. Oh, and f4 also. I think Sviridov's going to win this game and go to 6-0. Hikaru versus Bortnik. Queens had to be traded eventually. This was the key moment of the game, so we're going to see it real quick. He couldn't find any other way other than bringing the queen to f3. Yeah. So black covers the a pawn with the bishop. Wait, Hikaru's got a chance to play a5 and doesn't go for it. And here we are. Moment of truth. If king h6, g4 check. If a5, bishop takes a5. Bortnik's looking for counterplay because he's got nothing else to do in the meantime. His bishop is just barely like hanging in there. b4, weird move. Bishop takes it, just giving a pawn and king here. This looks like a draw to me. I don't really see real winning chances here for Hikaru. Bortnik sacks the pawn just to open up more diagonals for his bishop and get the game closer to all traded off. Then doesn't take here. He's bringing his bishop to d8. Hikaru goes to g4. This is the moment. Check. And the king's got to get to a8. No, the king's got to get to h4. Yeah. Okay. And the bishop covers this pawn. Bortnik is held, folks. We're going to go look at the other endgame. White is up 2 pawns, getting very close to winning. c5, c6 looks like the breakthrough. Got to avoid mate in 1. Back off king. Oh, but now you can't defend this. Rook here, b7. Yeah, this looks winning. It looks winning. But it's tricky. Rook back here. King's going to try and come into there. Yes, Sviridov's going to be okay. Hikaru and Bortnik have drawn as predicted here. And g6 looks good. King g6 too. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Rook b5 would be the defensive try. Still struggling. 10 seconds to go. 1 repetition. Gives up the b pawn. Cuts off the king by 2 files. It looks like it is enough. Yeah, you can trade rooks and queens. And Sviridov keeps the lead in the tournament. Goes to 6-0. Whoo! Whoo, mama. Oh, we got Steven Zierk here fighting against the bishop. He's going to get... Oh, the bishop. h3. Yeah, he's got the draw. He's got the draw. Bravo. Drawing down a bishop based on the wrong colored pawn. If white had played bishop takes g4. And Steven Zierk holds the draw here. Wait. They did something fancy for fun. Okay. Rook and knight versus rook should be a draw. Oh, but that's losing. Now just rook here. Rook there. And maneuvering to rook c2. What do you guys think the draw was here for white in this position here? Because checking bringing the knight to c3 was wrong. This is a very, very tough position for white right here. Probably rook h8. So then on knight c3, you can just go here. And then when the rook tries to maneuver to the second rank, you can just give checks from behind. In general, you don't want your king right in the face of the opponent's king when they've got the extra knight. You want to try and like run away from their king. So here you're in like one of the toughest situations defensively for white with your king stuck right in front of their king. I think with knight c3 coming, the only hope, yeah, probably rook h8 and checks from behind. All right, let's see if there's any other games still going in this round 6. Nope, we're on to round 7. Sviridov against Hikaru. Sviridov is in sole first place in this tournament, folks, and has the white pieces against Grandmaster Hikaru. Will Sviridov move to 7-0? Hikaru playing what looks like a Leningrad. Yep, it says Leningrad, Dutch. Defense. Beautiful. Dynamic opening. Very, very good for winning games as black. Queen d2 is maybe walking into this rook d8 move. If knight d5, queen d2, knight f6, check, bishop f6, knight d2, and then rook takes d2 at the end, white would lose themselves a piece with the famous knight d5 idea. So don't go there. Move the queen back over to c2. He's thinking heavily about this. Seems to have been completely shocked by this rook d8 move. It's not so bad for white because, you know, they want to play rook d1 and trade rooks. So the rook's not like better on d8 than on f8. Queen d2 was not like a disaster. But the disaster was spending 20 seconds worrying about it afterwards, perhaps. Sviridov, 20 seconds down. But that's not as bad as Hikaru's other opponents so far. Hikaru gives up the bishop pair on f3 for very little, and Hikaru is weak on the light squares. To my view, I clearly prefer white's position at the moment. Clear preference for white. All you do is you put rooks on the d file, you trade rooks. Oh, but then I guess if all the rooks come off the board, then you get like a maneuvering endgame where the knights are not too bad. It's tricky. He tries the same move Hikaru played against Bortnik yesterday. Knight to d5. If pawn takes, knight to d4. What is the reason that this would be good enough for white? I mean, it is just a pawn for a piece. It's just a pawn for a piece. And not only that, Hikaru is taking the moment to like send some guys towards the white king. Like, hey, could you just go intimidate the king for me, right? Queen h3 threatened. Queen c6 threatened. All right, f3. Covering it. It's weird to have the only light squared bishop and have trouble covering f3 and h3. Is Hikaru just going to go for something like e4 here, just trying to smash the white king without getting the rooks out? Okay. Softening up g3, preparing queen h3. White probably has to play queen g2. And now the rooks come back to the f file. This knight d5 didn't look right, did it? Thanks, Ken. I'd been managing to occasionally avoid it. But, I don't hate Ken. Okay, here comes e4. Bishop on b2 is dangling, but it would be with checks, so black can't get queen h3 in. So Hikaru may have been planning to play bishop b2, queen h3 or something when he went for that e4 move. Instead, he just gives the pawn. And now looking at knight g4, Sviridov trades off the knight. But can he still play e5? He can, right? Sviridov is seeing that on bishop f6, he can still play e5. So Hikaru plays rook f6. That doesn't prevent e5 either, does it? No. Oh, Sviridov, big mistake. I think it was the moment. You have to play e5 and then rook f1, queen f1. You're still covering queen h3. And if black takes on e5, you've got back rank mate on f8. That was the moment. You have to get that pawn through the light square there. Now Hikaru's got the dark square blockade on e5. Sviridov willing to give up a rook to unblockade himself. But, yeah. This might work against a normal human, but Hikaru's got over a minute on the clock, which is like 3 hours worth of analysis for a normal human. He will find his way through this. Queen h3 check is being allowed. And the idea is to play rook f7 after queen h3, king g1, queen h5. So Hikaru now takes the rook because queen h3, h5 wasn't satisfying. And now, apparently that's resignation. Sviridov throws in the towel. I mean, if pawn takes, then knight takes e4 is pretty obvious. But after queen f4, hang on, folks. We need to... It's hard to keep up with these guys. It is check here and then rook f8, leaving the knight hanging with back rank mate here. And on queen check, the king can probably just come hide over here. And white is mated. See, Hikaru finds his way through that. No problem at all. Makes up for the half point lead that Sviridov had. Says, you may be a GM. You may even be a super GM at Blitz, but I'm the SCC champion at Blitz, right? I'm just the greatest online Blitz player in the world when Magnus is not interested in playing online Blitz. And takes the lead back in the tournament with 6.5 out of 7. There's 2 others who are already there as well, as you can see below me, Bortnik and Zhu. And Jospim here takes the draw? What? Oh, because if you defend f2, black takes on b3, and then you know, black's the one playing for a win. Yeah, okay, good call. Good call there by Jospim, not to go crazy. We got Jeffrey Xiong against Alexander Donchenko. And Xiong down in exchange, but the pawn on c7 is pretty good. What is that move? Knight b6? Transferring to a rook endgame. No, that's a mistake. There's knight e7, and you're down. No. Donchenko needed to answer this move with pawn takes knight, rook takes, and then king f8, bringing the king towards the c-pawn and playing a bad rook endgame. White's going to be probably winning that rook and pawn ending anyway, but I think a lot of Blitz is just keeping the ball in the court, you know, playing the forced moves, seeing the little tactics. So, all right, Mishonik in trouble, threatens mate in 1, but White doesn't allow it. That was one of the last tricks that Serrana is going to have here against Rud Makarian, who forces a fancy simplification. Folks, have you ever seen this before? Rook check with the bishop covering it. So you're actually forcing the king to make the trade with you. That was fancy as all heck. Whew. Sweet. Here comes that G-pawn. Nothing to do but wait to lose. White can eventually bring the bishop to d7. Hey, that wasn't that eventual. Now the knight's down to e8 as a square. Yeah, play f5. King h6. Oh, I guess you can do king h6 even with the pawn on f4. I was going to play f5 and then king h6, but this seems to do it. And Rud Makarian taking out one of the favorites, one of the 3,000 plusers here. Alexei Serrana gets ground down in that endgame. Another Svein, Frederick Svein, also from Germany. I wonder if they're related to Rasmus. Playing against Sergei Zhigalko. This should be a drawn endgame, right? Whoa. I was like, unless White lets the pawn queen, but okay, rook c8 is check, yeah. We're just going back and forth and back and forth. Rook h3 to h8 to h7 to h3 to h8. It's really... No, what? What's that about? Fancy move. Oh, maybe trying to get black to flag or something? This is a dangerous game. I see no possible satisfaction in this position for anyone because like there's no way to win on the board for white or for black. So all that could happen is one player or another could flag, right? I mean, there's... Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I just saw the eval bar go crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that can happen on the board. I don't see why black put their king on a back rank. Their king was really good on c3. Now if they go king f8, there's checkmate, and black flags, but they may have also actually lost the game. You got me, Anita. I need to take a drink. I was wrong. God. Noob streamer, I don't have my water with me. I mean, black really helped mated by walking their king to g8, or help Zugzwang themselves. It's kind of a fancy Zugzwang too, right? The bishop defending h2, king f8. There's back rank mate. What? But I mean, what? Why were either of them playing any of these moves? I mean, it was like just king c3, king b3, king c3, king b3, king c3, king b3. Like, what are you doing? What a waste. What a waste. All right, let's see if we've got another rook and knight versus rook. No, we've got the rook versus rook. Somebody complained about this position last time. White avoids the trade, keeping it interesting. Keeping it interesting. Just kidding. We're going to go look at rook and knight versus rook again. All right. Now, let's see if white can defend this. So you want to run away from the king here. That was very, very risky. Okay, go away from the king. Very good. That's good. Just run away from that black king. And there we go. Rhino says, you know what? I think Quahada 0 knows what they're doing. I'm going to take the draw. We've got exactly 3 players tied on 6.5 out of 7. Oh, the king and rook are still going. Now they're holding up the whole tournament. Now they're holding up the whole tournament. Oh my God. Should I be showing you guys a puzzle instead of this? You want to see an actual like endgame puzzle instead of this position here? If these guys keep going for a while, I will. This is a great one from Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. Oh, never mind. They agreed to a draw. We're back. We're back. We're live. All right, folks. Round. No. Hang on. Here come the games. All right. Hikaru against Ju. Yeah, can you believe like Hikaru just had to wait like a minute for somebody to move around in circles with their rook against another rook? Unreal. He should have one of his mods send that guy an angry, drunk text. All right. Going back to the double fianchetto. Who is Ju96? That's a great question. Let's find out. Oh, I've got an idea. It's this guy whose name I can't spell. It's going to be Tim Jamsarov Sidipov. Let's see. Here it is. It's written up here. Jamsaran Sidipov. Yeah. In my head, I knew who it was, but I have no idea how to say their name. All right. So, opening up with C and D pawn trades, Hikaru really wants to be down a pawn. Refuses to take it back. That was shocking, folks. I mean, queen c4, and he just says, no, I need some imbalance, even if it's just me having one less pawn on the board. If they are from the Asian part of Russia. Could be. Could be. There's a big Asian part of Russia. I don't know much about Russia, but I've seen a map. All right, so Hikaru purposely playing down a pawn. Obviously good compensation for it, but quite a daring or aggressive choice to be down that pawn. Trade on f6. Huh, I didn't see that queen check coming. What's he going for? What's his plan? Black's probably going to like play f5, right? What's the plan? Does anybody see where Hikaru's attacking black from yet? I don't see it yet. He's going to go rook d1, rook c1. I just don't know why he's going for this before bringing the rooks with tempo on the queen in the middle. I can't see it. It's so that once black plays f5, the queen can't go to e7. That's a piece of it. I can't conceive of this conception. One more time, please. Yeah, I got my knight endgame book ready, Ken. If we ever get another rook versus rook time waste. The third time that two people play king and rook against king and rook, we're just gonna pull out the Averbach. Bishop d8. Okay, so by the way, folks, I can tell you one thing. Queen e7 here would have been truly terrible. You threaten checkmate, and f5 can't be played anymore. But I don't know why f5 itself wasn't just played here. But anyway, we get bishop d8, weird move. Knight c5, winning the pawn on b7 at a minimum. And the knight on b7 will also be threatening this bishop. It'll go to e7, though, and then the knight will be weird. I don't know if the knight wants to be there. Hang on, it's gone there. Moves updating. Queen e7, knight b7, f5. Queen d4 check. I guess queen f6 here, right? What's the idea, Hikaru? I can't see what you see. Getting the rook off of a1. The other rook to d1 would have been much worse, folks. You all see why? Queen trade and then bishop f6 and ow. Okay, so now we're in this endgame. Opposite colored bishops. Hikaru's still just a little bit better. He's gotten his pawn back after a lengthy and hard to fathom pawn sacrifice. But now what? Where do we go from here? Sweet Hikaru of mine. Where do we go now? To the 7th rank, I suppose. And activating the bishop. He doesn't want to trade pawns with e4. He wants to leave as many pawns on the board as possible, but right now this pawn structure is stymieing his bishop, so he's bringing it around like this way or this way. Now he's always going to have knight d6 as an option. You can also go h3 and g4. Oh, the bishop finds a way to get to f7. It finds the soft underbelly of Jamsaran's position. Who wants to bet that Jamsaran is born in 1996? I feel like Jamsaran should be a little bit older than that, so that 96 might not be his birth year. All right. Bishop retreats. Hikaru's time's ticking. He's not seeing a way to pose, like, evil problems. So, looks to double on the 7th. Yeah. I'm in favor of that. I don't know why the bishop came back. Let me just see a second right here. Why did Hikaru's bishop come back instead of, like, rook here and rook here? Because of knight d5. Okay, so he brought his bishop back so he could double rooks without allowing knight d5. Once his rooks are doubled, he will be threatening bishop h5, I think, because then, on knight d5, he can just take. So king here is going to stop bishop h5 from coming in the future. It also unpins this pawn, so if the rooks double, white's not threatening rook e6. Yeah, so Hikaru is going to try and take a square or two away from the king with this pawn. Bishop gets out of the way of rook d7 in advance, but it was going to have to go there anyway. Knight c6. Okay. Now what, Hikaru? The rook looks trapped, so he trades the knight. Brings this knight to take on f7. Now does black need bishop c5? I think black needs bishop c5. Throws in the rook check first. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Rook f7 did not quite work, I guess. Hikaru loses the pawn on e3, but gets the pawn on f7 for it. Oh, man, it is uber complicated right now, and Hikaru is down under 10 seconds. The first time we've seen him in time pressure here. So he needed all his time for this. And now he may have to give a perpetual here. No, he actually manages to get the king off of his rook and take the opponent's rook. And now it looks like he's winning. Rook f4 can just be played here. Sorry, that didn't work out. Oh, and he takes the last pawn, and it is over. Hikaru takes out Sidipov, and rook g4, cool. And rook g5 and queens. Oof, brutal. What a play from Hikaru. That was a tough game. Is it fair to say that that game was tough for Hikaru? I mean, I know I can't really judge his limits, but it feels like that game he got pushed to use everything he had. Now, this endgame here, if white had had the rook on g1, they could have still drawn with the frontal defense despite being cut off by a file. But now they got cut off by a second file before they got close. And this is the classic position that's winning. No, the king just needs to go here. Where are you going, Super Notar? g4 and h3. No! Just go king g5. Then when they check, you go king f4, king g4, king h3. Oh, well. Oh, my God. And letting the white king come a whole file closer. No! We're going to have to go over this position. What? Wait, now the white king can get... No. The white king can get in the way of the pawn now. Oh, white missed their chance to bring the king back across the e-file. White's got 2 seconds left. But black's not doing anything anymore. They're advancing now. Looks like white's getting death squeezed. Can rook e1 be played there? No. Rook e1, king e3, and black would win still. Oh, man. Well, this one would make it into Dvoretsky in his tragicomedy section. Now it's the Lucena, finally. Rook check, rook to the 5th rank. No, you build your bridge first. What? What are they? Good move, rook e5. That was a nice one. Knew that move. Got it. Okay. Black finally takes it down. And our last game is rook and knight against rook again. Now we've had this one 3 times. Please let us not get rook against rook 3 times. Oh, what a defense! What a defense from Frederick Svan. Beautiful, beautiful. He at least made it beautiful for us. Thank you, Frederick. A beautiful stalemate is much better than another 30 moves while everybody waits. That brings us to our second and final pause in the tournament. We've got a 5-minute break before round 9. 3 more rounds to go when we come back from this little break. Everybody enjoy. All right, welcome back everybody to Title Tuesday on chess.com. It is round 9 kicking off right now. Whew. Oh, they're kicking off too fast for me to even get the first move in. The question, I did make it. The question, will anybody be able to slow Hikaru down now? He's in the sole lead for the first time this tournament with 7.5 out of 8. There are 6 players half a point behind him, including Conrad Holt, Dretch, and Jeffrey Xiong. We saw Jeffrey give up a big upset on our stream earlier today, and he has torn back with all wins other than that. So far, Hikaru's only half point was given up in a tough opposite-colored bishop endgame to Alexander Bortnik. Hikaru was pressing the whole time, but Bortnik just barely held it together. It was a very, very tough hold. So let's see how he does here. Jeffrey Xiong ahead on time against Hikaru. We've basically never seen that either. Couple seconds up, Hikaru worrying about Jeffrey's opening prep for a moment there, or recalling some of his. You can be sure he was looking up at the ceiling for a second. Yeah. And, okay, so Black's trying to recover that pawn on c5 without hanging the pawn on d5, right? So, like, if you ever play knight d5, knight c5, you have to worry about bishop takes. If you ever play bishop takes, you have to worry about knight d5. So queen comes to a5. So he's at least getting like a lot of development here. It's going to be risky for white to grab the pawn when they can't castle. But white is really trying to win this d5 pawn out of the opening here. And Jeffrey calculating. Trading on f6 looks very unintuitive. I guess he really, really feared knight e4 and his bishop being left out of the game over there. But yeah, I guess that has to be it. I was thinking a3 was the other big move. But okay, here we go. Bishop d3, simply played. Hikaru recovers the pawn on c5. White's maybe threatening b4, so Hikaru will have to rearrange slightly here, but he's got the bishop pair. He's got his pawn back. Everything looks happy for him. He has survived Jeffrey's white opening. Bishop coming out to g4. Immediately h3. The bishop can't retreat back to h5 and g6 because black has played h6. And f takes g6 would be too weak a recapture here. So Hikaru gives up the bishop pair, goes bishop e5, just playing a very, very simple, close to equal position. It looks like he's trying to pressure b2, but he might also just be playing d4 to trade off the isolated pawn and move towards equality. But, of course, in Title Tuesday, you need to rack up the score, so he'll be looking to somehow win this game. So will Jeffrey. No matter how equal it gets, they'll be looking to win it. We've seen people trying to squeeze boredom out of rook versus rook. So they will certainly still be trying to squeeze something out of this game. The opposite-colored bishops always keep it more interesting in the middle game, but then more drawish in the end game. So we'll see how that pans out. Can Hikaru just play d4? Maybe. There's queen b7 to worry about after going for that move. And he just plays it solid. He's under no pressure at the moment. If white could do anything, it would be to move that knight to f5. Now, normally in these structures, you think the knight goes to d4. But here from f5, the knight would both help control d4 and throw some looks at the black king on g8. So I think knight e2 to g3 to f5 would be really amazing for Jeffrey. And Hikaru pre-covers that square. Starts to shore up the light squares. King will be happy on g7. He gets rid of back rank mate, which he was starting to worry about. You know, some scenario where he plays d4 and at the end white has rook c8. Jeffrey gets the b pawn out from under fire. And Hikaru just makes space for the queen. Makes a little trade. Wants to attack white's a3 pawn after this. Rook c5. I know that's what you wanted to do, but what's the idea? After your b pawn gets taken, rook to b5, queen to d2 doesn't look good for Jeffrey. Oh, right, rook b5 first before recapturing. Okay, that's solid. That's solid. He's still just fine here, although, I mean, it was nice having the rooks on the c file. Is the rook going to be good on b5? Does the bishop provide stable protection? I guess on a light square, the rook will be okay on b5, and it attacks Hikaru's pawns. Hikaru's time advantage is gone again. Banana Bonanza points out that this is intense. I agree. Even though there's sort of like nothing going on, I feel this like inherent tension waiting below the surface of this game. G3, they're just like G6. Covering the dark squares, blocking the opponent's bishop. You need to restrain the opponent's bishop in the middle game with this nice solid pawn chain, just like black is trying to restrain white's. Rook d1. Looking at the d5 pawn more and more. Is there some scenario where he's going to play? You know, you're just waiting for like bishop c4, queen c6, and suddenly everybody's pieces are hanging, right? That's that weird tension that's going on here. He tried it, and he saw queen c6 coming, of course. He planned this crazy move, rook d5, but I think queen c4 might refute it. Oh no, that wasn't it, Hikaru. So the idea is that on knight takes, bishop takes, and he's hitting f7. But I think the problem with rook d5 was actually queen c4 letting this piece hang, and then, oh no, the queen's covering e2. I don't even know what the problem was. Huh. Fascinating. Jeffrey Xiong sacks 2 rooks and gives a perpetual check. What an explosion. That's what was like waiting below the surface this whole time, right? Who's Jeffrey Xiong, Dorodoa? He is a 21-year-old grandmaster from the U.S. rated 2,700 FIDE. He's enjoying this position. Spending like 30 seconds enjoying the draw with Hikaru, and that opens it up for other people to have a chance to catch up. We've got Super Notar and Jospin playing here, but also Dretch. We haven't seen Conrad Holt playing yet. Let's see how Holt is doing against the extremely strong and high-rated Vladislav Artemiev. Holt is up 2 pawns here. What business does anyone have being up 2 pawns against Vladislav Artemiev? Knight g4, and then you can take with check and recapture on c4, saving the b pawn. Oh, man. Conrad Holt. He's going to have to give up the b4 pawn now, though. And then he can check on f6 and take on c6, I think. No, then there'd be a draw. So what does he have to do? Oh, it's so hard to win queen endgames. I think he needs to put his queen on e5 with all checks and then start advancing his g and h pawns so that it covers the check diagonal to his king, and then you start advancing the pawns. h4, that's good. Finds a moment. Conrad Holt, fantastic play there. Fantastic play. Where does the queen need to go to defend both these pawns? He's trying to find it. e7. Then there's queen f4. Queen g3, giving up one of them. No, that's not quite right. Ooh, Jospin just won on the other board. Oh, he's threatening queen g6. That's winning. Isn't it? Three seconds each, and nails the queen trade finally. And Conrad Holt is tied for first going to the last round, along with Jospin and Hikaru and maybe somebody else. Valery Sviridov, when I look down below at the standings here. Oh my goodness. And Bortnick says in the final position, king h6 would keep the game going. Right where Artemiev resigned. That is crazy. That is crazy. And that's one of the reasons why Bortnick has, a 3,000 blitz rating. Because even with like 0.1 second per move, like he notices random little things like that. That is absolutely crazy. There are 2 rounds to go. That is correct. Oh, and we're into the next round. No time to dwell on that. Players, on your marks, get set, go. Jospim against Sviridov. These guys are tied for first. And Hikaru and Conrad Holt meet. It's been a while since I've seen these two play. Conrad Holt has always played the French defense. And still playing it now. I would say Conrad Holt is probably a semi-retired American Grandmaster. I mean, I haven't seen him in the standings of like the big American Opens recently. Obviously, a lot of those were recently canceled for COVID, but I hadn't seen Conrad play for a couple years. This is my favorite system to play against the King's Indian attack as well. For black, I think it gives you like a nice amount of space, and whenever white threatens e5, one thing you can do is play f6 and just control that square. And another thing you can sometimes do is just play f5, grabbing space. But here, if he plays f5, Hikaru's planning h5, kicking the knight away, and then e5. So he would have to play knight e5 then. Yeah, I suppose f5 is a playable move here, I think. Yeah, actually, I like f5. I was considering d4 as well. That's the other move I was considering. My problem with d4 was maybe like h5, knight e5, trade, and f4. This position I like for black. I don't like c3 from white, because I feel like black's got good use of this file. Yeah, there goes a rook to that file. I think this bishop is just going to tuck on e8 pretty soon. Boom! Bishop tucks on e8. Just getting out of the way. There's nothing useful to do with this bishop. It doesn't have a better square. Here it can eventually come to b5, and it can help with like any of these pawn pushes. But at the moment, it just needs to stay out of the way of these rooks. They need to be coordinated. There needs to be pressure on the d file, and sometimes you need to defend c file with the rook as well. So this is a pretty optimal placement of Conrad's pieces for the moment. And we see Hikaru going a bit down on time. I actually mildly prefer black in this position. So we'll see how that goes. Black can play knight d4 here. That's what Hikaru just allowed after long thought by undefending the queen. Conrad goes for something else, but folks, I think knight d4... Oh, this move's good too. This move's good too. Who cares? This move's good. But knight d4, you see the knight can't take because you lose a piece. And if the bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop takes, the rook defends here, the knight's threatening this, and white's weak on the dark squares on the queen side. So it's like a clear advantage for black in the endgame. Knight b4 is played. We get a similar position, but Hikaru gets something going with the center here. And this knight's a little bit weird out on its own here. So, more complicated position. I think black's going to just play h5 and anchor the knight against bishop h3. Yep. Hikaru makes it past d-pawn. b5. Yes, good move, Conrad. I was looking at bishop b5, and it just wasn't fast enough to deal with that knight. But this is exactly what Conrad needed. Now he can trade that knight on e3, bring the bishop to b6, bring the noise with the rook and the unopposed dark squared bishop. This bishop's really, really strong here. What is that? Oh, he was worrying about these diagonal. Huh. Okay. I'd say position should be about equal now. For a second, I like black's position with bishop b6 and the rook coming down somewhere. How are Jospim and Sviridov doing? Sviridov looks like he's just captured a pawn on b2, right? Slurp. His king is looking rather open. He's relying on his bishops to just cover the entire board. Jospim is down 2 pawns now, looking for knight g4. Actually, Jospim's problem is that the queen is trapped, right? That's Jospim's problem. It's going to be hard to checkmate without a queen. Very hard. See how Hikaru and Dretch are doing in the endgame. We had a light squared bishop trade. Black's got this doubled pawn, and this pawn's really strong. But the bishop is really good too, so it's hard to tell which way this endgame's going to go. Still very hard to tell. Okay, threatening rook e2. We're going to have to play king f1 for white to keep this covered. Oh, he wants to play this. But the rook's a little bit stuck here, right? I mean, Hikaru can just cover the knight with this, I guess. Overprotect the knight, overprotect the pawn, and then this rook might be weird. Eventually, white can play, like, I don't know, d6 and rook c2 or something. No. Okay. Apparently not. Apparently Conrad's right. Hikaru sees no way to take advantage of that rook right there. Knight's headed to f4. Sviridov has 50 seconds against 30 as well. The queen can move, though, now. It can move. Sviridov's still up 2 pawns, but the queen can move. And Sviridov's time advantage is ticking down. e6. Okay. I mean, you got to bring your queen into the game, right? Do it. Okay, he wants to go queen e5 to g3, I think. And then bishop e5. No, these guys are on a different level than that. That's too basic. Queen e6, just defending this pawn. Just defending the pawn. Queen to d3. Attacking these 2 pawns is what I expect. Oh, wait. That pawn's already hanging. Just take it. Okay. Hang on. That might have been the moment to take all of these pawns for the knight. Bishop there, check. Here, rook c6. And the c5 pawn is gone. Now that c pawn is really, really dangerous all on its own. I mean, it was 2 different kinds of risk. Hikaru against Dretch in the rook endgame, up 1 doubled pawn, but Dretch is down to 7 seconds. Other than that, Dretch's position, Conrad Holt, is doing quite all right. Holding things okay for the moment. And I'm not sure what's wrong with just going like rook d3 and going after this pawn from behind. Oh, Hikaru forces him into it. Okay. No problems for Dretch now. Let's focus on this other one. Oh, into the rook endgame. Should be drawn. Conrad Holt declines a draw, but that's a draw. Oh my gosh, it's all GM draws on the top boards here. Who's going to pull ahead? Who's going to be able to pull ahead? I mean, Jospim's up a pawn now, amazingly, after like a game of just suffering. To go from down 2 pawns to up 1, that's a big swing. Rook g7. Uh-oh. Now there's actual trouble for Sviridov here. For the first time all game, there is true trouble. King e4 to f4. That looks winning. That looks actually winning. I think it's over. King g6. And resigns, so it will be Jospim who takes advantage of this round. The key moment was that check where the rook got into g7. Right here. The king went the wrong way. Oh, but if it goes this way, then is white coming in with king f6? Then there's rook check. King here. Yeah, that's got to be right. Keeping the rook out. That had to be the turning point in that endgame. Sviridov comments that game was so lucky. Okay. Sure. Round 10 of 11. 2 games left. Nope. 1 game left. And it's a rook endgame. See here, the black king is cut off. but they're using frontal defense, and they've got enough room for the rook to draw the game by frontal defense, but they just got their king cut off on the rank, and now they're losing because the king came up. See here? You can't move your king up. Once your king gets cut off on the rank, you're losing. Here's where they are. What white can do is bring the king up, block the check there, bring the rook here, bring the king up to g4. You can also play g4 at any point. What? What happened? Drawn? By what? By repetition. You can also just play g4 as white in these positions. You can just play g4, right? And then you bring up your king. This is a very, very simple process. You bring up your king, right? And then you bring up, then you go here, bring up the rook one file, and here. This is an unstoppable mechanism. You just advance the pawn, bring up the king to defend it, always go up another row. Black has no way to ever draw this if their king can't get in front of the pawn. So I know a lot of people think like it's active to get your king forward, right? But this is the losing move for black, king e3. If you just keep your king back at like e5, e4, and check the white king whenever it comes out, you can draw with frontal defense here. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. I know you guys probably want to see what happens and who wins Titled Tuesday, but that endgame's come up a couple times. We have to mention it. All right, so here's Jospin against Hikaru. This is the final showdown. Jospin is up half a point. Seoul first. There are 5 players with 8.5, including Hikaru and Conrad Holt and Jeffrey Xiong and Alexander Bortnik. Let's open up a couple games at once just in case, right? We can pop over whenever somebody gets mated. I mean, I don't think we can possibly watch 3 games at once, but let's just see. So, weird bishop position here in this game. Zeno, you played a good rook endgame today. I'm glad to hear that. This weird bishop d3 from Jospin, anti-theory. Moving the bishop again. Hikaru stops d4 because he's going to take it whenever it comes. And now this is basically, it's like a good French defense because Hikaru can get the bishop out to f5 and play e6 and stuff. But Jospin's waiting to take this pawn because he wants Hikaru to worry about bishop f5, knight d4. So Hikaru has to find like a very, very clever move here. a6, forcing the bishop to the side, and then he gets out. He found the clever move, folks. Now, even Hikaru, it took him a moment to think of this, but this is a clever move. You want to be developing quickly. You don't want to waste moves on a6 and h6 and h3, but hey, white wasted a move on h3. But this is key because now he can put his bishop out here. If you play e6 here, you can never bring your bishop out. If you play bishop f5, then you can never play e6 because of knight d4. So very, very clever. Now Hikaru's got a very, very good sort of like French/Hikaru Khan going on here. Conrad Holt against Jeffrey Xiong is an absolute mess. What did Holt just do? He played b4 when the square was completely covered by Jeffrey. Then throws in the check. And then takes on f6. Look, the king can't go to h8 because of knight f7. This is a crazy calculation this early in the game. Queen can't recapture because of knight d7. So bravo, Conrad. You calculated like a beast. Now, what's the point of this position? What's happening here? Knight f7 must be what he's calculating next, right, everybody? What do you think? Is that what's on his mind? He's played a move. It just hasn't updated for me. Let's see. He retreated. You guys want to ask the spacebar if knight f7 would have been a good idea? The spacebar says no. I bet that's what he was planning, though, and calculating. And now we see him like pretty low on time here. And Bortnik against Dropstone. I don't know who Dropstone is, but it says they're from Russia. GM Dropstone. David Pruess. Oh, a very strong player. Not as famous as he is good. Very, very good. Dropstone here. Knight takes f3. Who's coming out ahead in material? I think Dropstone might be up a pawn when all is said and done, and white will have some compensation because black's pieces aren't out. But Bortnik's got to choose the right way here. If you take the pawn, then you can make a couple more trades. But if you take the pawn, you have to calculate knight e5, tempoing your bishop, and then pawn takes f5, and you lose. So I think he's got to take the knight, get a tempo on the bishop moving. No, he goes the other way. Maybe I was wrong. Knight e5, though. Now what? Looks like he's losing this. got f4 coming to try and get into here. No, just rook e1 is better than f4. Simple king e2. Well, white is in lots of trouble now. Oh, if bishop c5, he's got rook c1, b6, knight d6, winning a pawn back. So it's still within the drawing margin for white because it's obviously called bishops. But drawing isn't going to win you a tournament, Bortnik. Let's see who's going to win the tournament. Back to Jospin and Hikaru. So white managed to play c4 at some point and trade off this pawn before white came under serious pressure on the c file. And Hikaru picks up the pawn on a3, but the queen's been bullied. The white rooks are incredible. I would rather be white here, even down a pawn at the moment. I bring the next rook into d6, play h5, h6. Got to be careful. Maybe g4. When you go h5, black's going to play h6. If you go g4, g5, then g6. You need to get one of these pawns to the 6th rank to finish breaking black. Looking for the double on the 7th rank. Oh, yeah, and then rook e7, kicking the queen and rook f7. Okay, so Jocelyn found a way to win the position. Found a way to win the position without using a pawn to break things. And Hikaru's down to 30 seconds trying to find a way to stop this incoming rook e7 move that would break the defense of f7. Plays h6 after long thought. We'll see what the idea is. Rook d7 comes in, gives the check, comes here. What is the idea? I don't even know what Hikaru's thinking of, folks. There's something going on with like putting the king here in the e5 square, but what on earth is it? Is it rook f7, queen c7? That's what he's planned. Rook f7, queen c7, rook f8 check, king h7. That's what he's set up. Why didn't the king go to h7 now? I don't know. Queen e5. Queen e5. Oh, man. Hikaru just had a chance there to win the tournament with queen e5. Let's see if Jospin repeats. Does not repeat. No second chance on that queen e5. We get to see that queen takes c7 resource, which is exciting. Jospin could not force a repetition there. Oh, but it would win the tournament for him, so we'll keep that in mind. A draw wins the tournament for Jospin, probably. All right. Threatens checkmate in 1. That would also win the tournament for him. Hikaru down under 5 seconds trying to find a way to stop the checkmate. If queen d4, queen g6. Down under 1 second and loses on time. And loses on time. And I don't know what this space bar over here is doing. The evaluation bar is saying that black's like completely winning here. I don't know why. I mean, the only move that I see that stops mate in 1 is queen d4. I don't know why Hikaru didn't play it since there's only one move to stop mate in 1 and the clock just runs out. But we have a champion for this title Tuesday. Jeffrey Xiong has just beaten Dretch as well, and Bortnik and Dropstone have a fairly boring endgame. But Jospin wins the game where he needs to draw. Maybe Hikaru saw after queen d4 just some kind of forced draw, and that's why he didn't play queen d4, because he figured it's like a forced draw is the same as a loss with the tournament situation. But even there, I mean, what is the forced draw? I don't see it. Like rook g7, queen check here, queen check, king here, and there's no further draw. That's a combination that often nets you like a perpetual, but it doesn't do it here. Oh, he didn't see that he could play queen d4. Oh, no. So he just like blanked out after like 2 hours of blitz, just missed one single move. Yipes. Okay, well, let's see. There may be some other games still going. Yeah, we've got Svirdov. Let's watch the man. Let's see if we can get some proper technique with the 2 pawns that, as we've seen, are quite hard to win with. Okay, the threat is here, trading rooks. Avoids it. Now the pawn gets to the 6th rank. That's it. He's going to bring the king in, and then he's got check and the check there. Beautiful technique from Svirdov. Fantastic. Now you have to queen with check. Then when the king takes it, you play king f6. Oh, he doesn't know this part. Come on, Valerie. You can figure it out. You have to queen with check. No, man. Oh, man, he doesn't know it. You gotta be kidding me. There you go. Yes. And then you get the opposition and bring the g-pawn home. All right. Bravo. Bravo. He did it. He did it. Well, that's an NM, but with a GM rating. And he found it. He found it. He was just working his way around to it. I guess he liked it better with the king on h6 than the king on f6. So, congratulations. You can see the tournament winners in 2 places now. We got the winner overall, Jospim, Jose Martinez. Then we've got in second place, Jeffrey Shong, sole second place with 9.5 out of 11. Gave up the big upset and came back to take a sole second place. Fantastic performance for Jeffrey. And then in third place on tiebreak, it's showing us Mishanik, Alexei Sarana. All the other players with 9 points. Very impressive as well. Valery Svirdov, Alexander Bortnik, and Dropstone DP. We saw the least of David Paravian's games, but fantastic performance as well, clearly. Folks, that's the end of Title Tuesday for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I was your host, International Master David Pruess, and I am off now to go stream on Chess Dojo Live. So I have been given permission to invite you all to come check me out on Chess Dojo Live after the show ends here. And we are just going to play a couple ads here. So please stick around for those. Actually, if you watch those ads, it generates a little bit of money for chess.com, which generates the prize fund for events like Title Tuesday and Speed Chess Championships, right? So you can hang out and watch a couple ads for them, or send chess.com a donation and then go off somewhere and don't watch the ads. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. I hope you picked up a couple things about Rook Endgames, not including the King and Rook versus King and Rook ending. And once again, congratulations to all the winners. See you all soon, and have a great day if I don't see you again today.